Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're all there. I feel like it's been such a long time. I'm confused and blurry, but hopefully not actually blurry. I've got everything plugged in again from a bit of a break. So make sure to tell me if I'm pixelated or my voice isn't good because I had to replug in like the microphone and the camera and all of that stuff. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I've got a clownish amount of makeup on today so that I look somewhat normal because this being sick thing is really getting old fast, and we've got to just force it to end, even if it doesn't want to. Good morning, Crystal. Oh, it's a gray and moody day in Nova Scotia. You don't mind it one bit. It's giving you that reason to stay in and hook, right? And mom is 1 hour away in Granby, Connecticut. Bright and shining sun, no wind, a little chilly, but it is fine. It is fine. It's a bright winter day. This is what I was asking for. This, instead of the gloomy late autumn days, these bright winter days. And we have that today, which is really nice. And Chrissy in Georgia, sunny in, oh, the sunny south, but not so sunny today. Okay. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Penny, soggy North Carolina. Oh, Karen, good morning. Good morning, Carol in Wisconsin. Enjoying a balmy 30 degrees. Wow, it's plunging, huh? Hit the thumbs up button. Yes, please. That would be amazing. Thank you so much. And Linda in Massachusetts. Oh, great. April, chilly North Georgia. And Donna is in Alberta. And Lori says, good morning, Beverly. Good morning. It looks like rain. Jennifer, gray, right? It's that kind of a thing. We got slammed with snow on Saturday when we were away because I'm so sorry about cocktail night on Friday. Good morning, Doreen. Good morning, Catherine. I'm so sorry about that. We checked into the hotel where we stay every year in Concord, Massachusetts. It's like the revolutionary town, and also the literary town, the American Bloomsbury. We've been going there for like 40 years or something to the same inn. And I had this vague memory of struggling with the internet at that inn. But, it was a year is a long time. And I was thinking, maybe not. Maybe I'm superimposing one memory of a hotel over another. But sure enough, when we got there, there's like no internet. I mean, it's there. But if you want to wait 15 minutes to make a post or give the thumbs up to something, then it's there. But if you want to do anything outside of that, so I'm so sorry. Good morning, Joelle and Anita. But I posted that the internet was not going to be good enough, and it didn't post for like another 4 hours. It took half an hour to write the post because the page kept refreshing. And then I went next door to my mom's room to have a little party, and then we went down to dinner, and I came up and it still hadn't posted, and you were all looking for me, and I felt so bad. Because some people even wrote on my phone from placing orders, you have my phone number too, and saying, did you arrive at your destination? I felt so bad. It felt like The Shining, going to this hotel in the middle of the snow where there's like no connections to the outside world, but it was super fun. And and we got blasted with snow on Saturday, which was really great because we were already there. And it is a wonderful thing to be able to walk around a quaint New England town that has stayed that way through the years with lots of unique shops, little antique shops, little boutique type shops, no chain, anything. Nice to be able to walk around a little village like that in the snow. In fact, funny thing, I was rewatching the Murder, She Wrote series, right? It was so good, so long ago. I started watching it from the beginning not that long ago, and I noticed, even though it's supposed to be set in Maine, Cabot's Cove, right? I'm guessing that's a fictional town, but the opening scene is shot in Concord, where we were this weekend. It's definitely that main street, and it hasn't changed at all. So that's how quaint it is, and it was great. And I do feel better from shingles, so thanks for asking, everybody. The shingles are a bit resolved. It's pain, but not anything crazy. But I did get a horrible cold, so it is what it is. I'm pushing forward. I want to say good morning to everybody. I forgot. I wanted to show you the hands thing that I'm working on because at this point, 80-something people have downloaded that. And that makes me so happy. That thing that I did for our group, the pattern with the hands and the gloves connected by the sort of strings from the mittens, but more like telephone wires so that we can stay connected over this holiday when everybody's very sort of separate and a lot of people feeling a bit lonely. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Bordando. Good to see you again. But I'm so happy that so many people have been working on that pattern. And, I did record. We had a chat at 7 to like 8:30 last night. Really nice resetting. everybody sitting and hooking over Zoom was really nice. And I did record it, but I did something really stupid. I said one of the C words, and I mean, not the bad C words, but like the one to do with 2020, because if you say that in a video, YouTube's computers can pick up on it. Even if I just say I got tested for, if the computer picks up on it, they shut your video down, and they can also shut your channel down. So I was reading a lot about that last night because I mentioned that I had had a test, and I said the word. And I thought, oh my God, if I post this now, they could not only shut this video down, they could shut the channel. And that would be a super bummer. So I won't do it next time. I promise I'll be really careful not to mention that word because it is super risky and it's happened to other people. YouTube is so, I'm so glad. YouTube is so indiscriminate with things like that. It's computers that search for this content and not human beings, of course. So if I say something stupid like that, which we should be able to say out loud since it is reality for all of us, we're all having the same 2020 experience. But if I say any of the words that are associated with it, I can get in big trouble and the channel can die an instant and irreversible death. So that was stupid of me and I won't do that again. Good morning, Amber. I know, right? Isn't the world crazy? It's filled with rules and there aren't people directly policing these rules. They just keep making more rules. And you have to search really carefully, fine-tooth comb type searching to find out the rules. You know, life is just so challenging right now. But one of the things that has been a consequence of me being so sick, I'm super late with the December design. So I didn't want to do something overly Christmassy to begin with because I know not everybody celebrates Christmas. And I know there was a good response with the gloves and the mittens. So I'm guessing people are still happy with the sort of neutral winter designs. So I was working on some little designs. I'm going to give you a sneak preview because it's going to be ready in an hour, but it's not quite ready yet. I was jamming away upstairs at my desk. I did this little design while I was away for an idea. Because you know how I mentioned, I really love crossovers. There's so many people right now doing crossovers. And my Friday cocktail episode was about an artist in Britain. So to be continued, this is just suspense and cliffhanger here. But it was about an artist that I will do this Friday in Britain who does a lot of crossover medium, hooking with a lot of different stuff and really different. So that's for this Friday. But it got me thinking and remembering how much I love crossover stuff. And I mentioned, I think, that I wanted to do a December design that was a bit reminiscent of cross stitch or a sampler, that kind of thing. Very sort of home sweet home Victorian motto feeling to it. So that little drawing came about. And then this morning, this little drawing came about. So we're getting closer here. We've got like a little needlepoint type house. This is my folded paper design, right? For everybody that does the composition stuff with me. Little Christmas tree. I'll develop all of this stuff. And then I'm working in a little folk angel, right? I felt like there had to be a folk angel where the weather vane would be. And I'm working in the text. I was playing with happy holidays, whatever, something about the new year. And I settled on the phrase, all things bright and beautiful, because I thought that was really beautiful, universal quote that everybody knows. And I thought it was a good sentiment to start the new year with, all things bright and beautiful. And judging from Saturday, when I thought of it and locked on it, the world was just covered with snow, the bright snow that you need to put your sunglasses on for, because it's like, careful what you wish for. It's gray and gloomy. And all of a sudden you feel like you're being x-rayed by Mother Nature because everything is so bright around you. Pendulum just keeps swinging, huh? Hey, Jennifer, I do too. I thought it was really, really nice. And it will involve text. So I will give options for people that do not like to hook text, but I will certainly do a video hooking the text of this design. So I was developing a bit more here. It wasn't really working out. And I'm working in a few snowflakes. Jocelyn, she took it away from me. She's got all these like little plastic templates. They look like, remember Trivial Pursuit, that little circle pawn that had the pie shapes? They look like that, but they're hexagon. She's got a bunch that they use for math class over the Zoom school. So I was working on configurations, and this is about as far as it's gotten so far. So it's going to be a house with matching trees. There's going to be at least 2 sets of snowflakes, all things bright and beautiful, and a little folk angel. And you know what else I'm going to do? I mentioned this last night in the Zoom class. You know, when you see Fair Isle sweaters and like beyond great knitting, like beyond, where the person has gone sort of in the background of the design, color variation, like level after level, almost like ombre dyeing, but not gradual, like steps of level color behind. That's what I'm going to do with this pattern. So I don't know if I'm going to do sunrise type thing or blue sky type thing, but it's all going to be one color hooking in the front, and in the background there's going to be little levels color. So it will look like a Fair Isle sweater, which I also wanted to work in. So that's coming later this afternoon, and I'm going to be dyeing all the wool for that, all the 3-ply. So you will be able to either punch it or hook it, but it'll be great. I hope you like that design. I thought doing a cozy home motif was going to be perfect for the end of the year. And that makes 12 kits that I put out this year. I also want to remind you, when you do the kits, you can also always ask me for a larger size if you want. The kits started out in January as being beginner kits. So they were all 10 by 10 and they still are. But if you ever want to do something larger, just let me know. And I can figure out multiplying the price for the difference. I never go crazy with prices. I'll come up with something reasonable if you want to hook it larger, not using it as a practice piece, but wanting it as a finished piece. So let me know if you want that too, because that's always possible, or getting it as just a pattern. So I think that's that. You can see I'm here with my Pearl McGown mushroom rug behind, because we're getting back to Pearl McGown, and the little sampler piece. There's a few Pearl McGown things I'm surrounded with this morning. Time check. Yep, we're fine. So I'm going to get back to her book, because I want to cover a lot of the Pearl McGown territory here. I want to get back to what we're talking about, her original designs for hooking, what that 20th century school of design, which really made modern rug hooking, what it's comprised of, what the most important ideals are, what the takeaways are from the Pearl McGown school of hooking, because she's such a big name. And as hookers and as people who enjoy the history of hooking, it's so important to know the main things that were important to her, because she was so in earnest when she started to compile old designs. What a wonderful hobby, and what a wonderful way to spend time as a single mother with practically no education, who had a tough time making a living out of something she loved, but a success story. Thinking about her traveling, searching for antique stores where the old rugs would be, searching around and trying to keep a catalog and an inventory of all the different designs, trying to figure out which ones were sort of mutations of a design that she already knew, or whether this was something new. I guess it's like a scientist searching for birds and bugs and things, right? You find one and it's kind of like this one, but it's missing 2 legs or something, and then it's a different species. Same thing for Pearl, traveling around trying to catalog rugs that were quite similar, a lot of the early ones, and trying to figure out if the person had been working off a commercial pattern or something from home with a bit of charcoal from the fire. This was a real labor of love. And this is something she did for many decades. And once she sort of got past that step and she became a designer in her own right, she's doing a lot of stuff like we left off with last week with dyeing, different kinds of dyeing, and perfecting the look of a very realistic rug, a very specific look of a rug. Not something graphic and primitive like the early rugs. This was something new, evolving rug hooking the way that painting, remember we were talking about the paint by number, evolving things the way that the paint by number people were doing, where they were telling you if you wanted to be completely successful and you did not want to go it on your own, you wanted help at every step of the way, they would show you exactly where to put each color. And it was sometimes numbered with rug hooking, and it was sometimes just color swatches that your kit came with. It was sometimes this, right? I'm just looking at this and thinking, bring this up too. Garrett style patterns, Blue Nose style patterns, this era of pattern on Lydia patterns are often colored, stamped and colored. And this also is a way of cueing you. Now, this is nothing as specific as some of the Pearl McGowns, where you get like a Currier and Ives scene that is super fiddly and small. And there's lots of little numbers showing you where the corresponding color will be with your swatch set that it would have come with. This is much more general. This is kind of like, this is a different color than this, but this doesn't have to be a different color than this. You figure it out from there. This is the shape to fill in, and everything else is kind of up to you. If you like red and pink, great. If you don't, go blue and green. But this is a little bit less suggestive because this is a little bit earlier and more of a primitive style. This is the one I got at that flea market that has a giant hole in it. So I got to think about what to do with this. But this is along the same lines of suggesting to somebody who's a hobbyist, who's taking this up for the first time or considers himself a beginner. And, some people will always consider themselves beginners. And this breaks my heart because even beginners who are working on their first rug, they have pulled that first loop. And in pulling that first loop, you have done the thing that will bring you to the end of your hooking career, hopefully many, 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 many decades, years, eons away. But once you pull that full loop, you are already hooking. And same thing for punching. So it just becomes a question of you're competing with just yourself. You're not competing with Pearl McGown. You're not competing with other people in your ATHA chapter or people on Facebook. You're just, and it's not even a competition. You're just comparing yourself to yourself. And if your loops get better, if they get more consistent, better is a word that's a moving target, right? That's kind of anti the sentiment of these books. Now, I think in general, we feel like your idea of better is different than my idea of better. Your idea of perfect and beautiful is different than mine. And knowing that, there's a really huge margin for error. And again, error is the wrong word because there are no mistakes. You pull the loop and the loop is pulled, and that's the end of it. But this school of hooking is very precise. And it certainly has a place because without knowing, without seeing these rugs that are almost like Oriental rugs, like, hand loomed, woven type rugs, manufactured rugs are perfection. Without seeing the perfection, it's harder to backpedal and do something a little looser because simple is hard, right? Doing a simple design is hard. Doing this stuff with somebody telling you the 24 colors that are in each flower, it sounds hard, but it's actually, I would venture to say, easier because somebody is showing you where to put basically every loop. So different school of hooking, but lots of interest and lots of information. And all of the early principles of hooking are here in Pearl McGown. Weird, right? So we were talking about how in this particular book, being her last book, she's showing us rugs that she hasn't shown us yet. And for whatever reason, she hasn't shown them. She wasn't hooking at this point. She was too busy. She traveled all the time. She was doing her own designing. She was busy. So she really was not hooking. And I think I think, I'm just guessing, common sense type guessing, part of the reason that we haven't seen some of the rugs from this book before is that she didn't have good examples of them having been hooked because she didn't have time to hook them. And unless another teacher or somebody hooked them really well, she probably wouldn't have photographed them and wanted to show them as the prototype for the design. That's my common sense thought, just putting things together, because every rug in this book is hooked by a teacher. And for example, this one is a really different one. We have seen some different ones already. Mushrooms, snowflakes. Remember snowflakes? Some of them are not the typical floral with scroll. Not many are. This one is called Camellias, and this is her rug number 589. So this was not a late rug. We're still in the hundreds, right? These are not late rugs, but this is the first time that she's published an example of this being hooked. It's not in color, but I hope that you can see that haziness around the edges. Do you see all this sort of haziness around each flower cluster? That's actually there. That's not a camera problem. It's really like watercolor washed behind each bunch of flowers. Now that is something different. That is something before this rug that I had not seen chronologically in the Pearl McGown rugs yet. This is something really different, and it's a device that is not used often, right? Have you seen it before where people do this bleeding behind the thing? It's basically using one thin strip and radiating out. And you get what looks like doing the flowers so realistic and then bleeding out with individual strips rather than patches or shapes. Individual strips bleeding out. It becomes something that looks like a very detailed watercolor painting with the watercolor bleeding behind it. It's a real specific look, and it is gorgeous. And this is something you could easily try with your rugs now, right? If you are using, even if you're using primitive 8s, if you cut them in half with your scissors and start bleeding some of the strips out like that, looking like water that's just finding its way, little rivulets of water bleeding away from the motif, you're going to get the same effect. So this piece is number 589. It's called Camellias, and it was hooked by Catherine Cogburn of Columbia, South Carolina, a teacher, like everybody who's doing examples in this book is, at this point, a Pearl McGown certified teacher. She said, this is something that she wrote that I thought was super cute. She says, this is Pearl speaking, "If you have not experienced true Southern hospitality during the months when camellias are blooming, you have missed a great treat. One year I stopped off at Mobile, Alabama, right? On the way home from Mexico. My friends overwhelmed me with camellias. In the classroom, in table decorations, in corsages, they drove me to see they drove me to see them blooming profusely in their beautiful gardens. And as a result, camellias was therefore designed especially for Southern hostesses. There you go, all our friends in the South, right? Don't you want this design now, camellias? Specifically for Southern hostesses. So Pearl is traveling like all of the time now, but in traveling, coming from Mexico up to China, she's still filled with ideas for original designs. And the patterns that she's working on at this point, because she's done so much work and her business has been going well, she's doing designs that she wants. She's doing things that she's inspired to do. And this is just another sort of evolution of her. She works for so many decades in rug hookings. There's so many eras of Pearl McGown. We're getting into the later ones now with this last book, but she's going to show you throughout. The top one is called Rapture, way more traditional. And the bottom one is called, what is it? Full Bloom, very traditional. So this is the book. If you're interested in Pearl, this is the book that's going to show you a real cross section between the very old and traditional, the original patterns that she found in the early days while she was intent on cataloging every design, and the designs that came later that were more whimsical, like snowflakes and camellias and mushrooms, that she will design herself because she wants to and for no other reason. This is an interesting one too. This one is called Postcards. Now, this is an early one. Again, there has to be a reason why we haven't seen number 215 yet. This is Postcards. And it's like an optical illusion. Now, you remember from our earlier coffee times that when you see a geometric, right? So this is an older pattern that she interpreted. I'll just read this first. Postcard, number 215, hooked by Laverne Brescia of Flushing, New York, a teacher. And she writes, William Winthrop Kent, and we know him too, the author of The Hooked Rug, says designs of this type were created by pushing a card, meaning a postcard, equal distances to form steps. And this is why it was called postcard. She says Laverne has given it a modern feeling. And you know how she's given it a modern feeling? With shading, right? So this is the modern feeling of the 1950s, 1960s, right? The modern feeling is intense shading. So Laverne has given it the modern feeling. But to me, the interesting part of this rug, two things. If you remember from the earlier coffee times, remember hearing, I was reading in books that Victorians would put their geometric rugs not in their best rooms. So if you were a family who had a parlor and you entertained guests in your parlor, you would not put your rugs there. Geometric rugs were for family spaces in the kitchen. They were considered not as gorgeous, not as breathtaking, not as interesting. So you would not see geometrics in a public space if you were a family who had that choice, right? So postcards, the way that she's describing the evolution of this pattern, so ingenious. You have a piece of backing from a potato sack or a food sack. You have a postcard that somebody sent you in the mail, and you're pushing it along at equal lines, watching your line so it stays even, but you're pushing it along until you get a very geometric pattern. You might be doing this with charcoal, but it's not going to be super difficult to do. And what happens when Laverne hooks it is she hooks every single brick light to dark very carefully. And you get this beautiful glowing effect. But can't you also picture this design postcards as a very graphic design with super solid colors in every compartment, every chamber, every brick. And not only that, but tweeds and things that change color in every brick. You can picture that easily, right? Because this is an early pattern. This is not a Pearl McGown pattern. I mean, this is, but the premise of it isn't. And she did it geometrically, probably not with a postcard, because she'd seen ones that were done that way back in the day. So that's just an interesting crossover with history. Keeping an eye on the time. We're doing kind of okay. Here's another little pop that I thought was cute. She comes back to mushrooms. I don't know if you're familiar with her patterns, but she started selling patterns with prefixes like this one is called P T20. So it means pillow for the P. And it's mushrooms again. This is the first time we see mushrooms, and she shows it twice in one book. And you know what I was thinking with this one? Never, right? I was thinking a few people wrote me about mushrooms, about finishing it and stuff. And I'm so happy if anybody wants to finish it, because there's already little flaws in the burlap that are a little sketchy. And if I were to finish this, I would be probably I would be finishing and restoring as I went. I would be, and I could definitely help you with this if anybody wants to take it on. I would be sewing backing behind it through the back of the loops to create a double layer to hook through, so that if the burlap is more vulnerable in the places it's not done, because it's been exposed all these years. The burlap that's hiding behind the layers of wool is more protected. That's going to last a lot longer. But the bare parts are the parts to worry about, the parts that have not been hooked yet. And that's the good news and the bad news, because if you were to finish a rug like this, or any old rug you have from a grandmother or that you found in a shop that's partly done, if you do stitch backing to the back, stitch it to the loops, don't stitch it right through, stitch it to the back of what's there, the finished part, and then hook through the two layers. Those two layers will be forever conjoined. That's a form of restoration that everybody uses. That's what was used for the rugs at Beauport when I did that tour a year or two ago. The restorer, who is specifically a textile restorer, restored in the same way. Everybody is restoring that way. It is the way to do it. Until the computer can find a better way to do it, that's the way we do it with our hands. So in one regard, it's good that the unfinished parts are the most vulnerable, because it's possible to finish and save this piece at the same time. At the same time, when I look at PT20 mushrooms, I think, there's so much of this rug that's finished. This is finished too, these wacky yellow mushrooms up here. It would be possible to take this rug and cut it into several pillows. And make this exact thing. But look how different this is in this mushrooms. Can you see how, because it's a smaller cross section, the mushrooms are super well done, but they've turned the road into like a shaded road, right? More shading. So instead of having it be flat, like this is flat background colors, because this is a full room-sized rug, they've done striations here, almost like that watercolor bleeding thing. And you're getting shadows, like it's a dusty road, like it's a country lane or country path, that kind of thing. That's just interesting. And what else is interesting to me about this pattern that I wish I could ask Pearl about is it is on the diagonal. And that is different, isn't it? That's not something we see often from her. Both the pillow and the rug are on the diagonal. Unexpected. And she doesn't do a lot of stuff with that kind of design configuration. So it does make one wonder. So this one is called, I might come back to this one tomorrow. Yeah, let me come back to this one tomorrow. Let me show you one other area, because we're not going to be done with Pearl for ages. One of the areas of this book that I found really interesting was she starts talking about some of her designs, and I'm sure that you've noticed this, what approximately cut size is the mushroom rug? 4. I'd say it's all 4. Yeah, that's definitely not a 5, but it's not smaller than a 4 either. Yeah, I'd say that's all 4. She does a lot of Chinese design, Asian designs, or what they would then call Oriental designs, not being able to distinguish the various countries yet. But now with travel and, we're a bit more aware now, identities for each country, what that looks like, what their traditional symbols are, colors are, designs are. But in the middle 20th century, it was all kind of Oriental. And there are a lot of designs that have an Asian influence. And I think that this part of Pearl is really, really exciting. For example, this pattern is number 731, and it's called Ming. It was hooked by Mariana Sossaman in Springfield, Illinois, a teacher. It's a Chinese Oriental. This is what Pearl says. Was hooked by an imaginative and clever teacher, 4 central motifs. They used coat hanger dyeing. We're doing that in our class, which is now sold out, but there'll be more dyeing classes coming up. This is Ming. And I think that is gorgeous. Now, this is different. This does have this very pretty white background. We saw this a lot in the 40s and 50s. The white was very mod and hip. And she's done a lot with the blue. She's done a lot with shading. But you still have that Asian influence. You see, the border is what is doing it. So this pattern is called Ming. And then we move on. It's almost like a fretwork, isn't it? The border is almost like a fretwork. And I know by seeing this, you're picturing other Pearl McGown patterns that have similar. This one's called Peony Hedge, hooked by Myra Perry of Willimantic, Connecticut, another teacher. The Chinese were masters of abstract, realistic, and fantastic designs, literally fantastic. Peony hedge was inspired by a late 17th century design. You will note how has detached lattices and frets with interlaced peonies imaginatively attempt to combine the abstract form of the Chinese woodwork with free forms of nature. That's interesting. The lovely chinoiserie will grace a modern room where Chinese has been combined with contemporary decor. So this is a decorating style, and you will see this in mid-century magazines. This whole idea of things being Japonois or Chinois, Chinese or Japanese, these are words that are used at this time because it's a big deal. There is a serious movement in interest in faraway places. I think we're going to start with that tomorrow. But this sort of wanderlust for faraway exotic places is a huge part of middle 20th century life. This is Peony Hedge. And in part, if you can imagine, in the middle 20th century, we have a lot of housewives who have had husbands who were fighting in the war and have been away in these very places. And they were not a part of that. And they missed all that. And they must think about that and wonder about that, because it's at this point in history, starting in the 1940s, that we see this huge design trend in architecture, interior design, textile design, clothing, fashion, that has this sort of chinoiserie about it, Chinese feel. It's this wanderlust. It's this longing for faraway places. And there could be any reason for that. I'm just putting it in a historical context. But Pearl is going to show us many rugs that have not just the fretwork border, but that interesting thing she said about it looking like a woodwork border, very rigid. And then the inside, much more organic. And these are the detached lattices that she's talking about, right? She's just randomly got fretwork, broken fretwork in the design. And, she is designing these at this point. She's interested in chinoiserie. She's interested in this movement in design, popular culture. It's a huge part of people's lives at home. So she wants to design some rugs that combine the very traditional florals and all of those motifs that we already know, and she knows better than anyone, with these Asian or Oriental type motifs like fretwork, lattice work, bamboo framing, right? We'll come back to that tomorrow because we are there for time. I'm reading A Christmas Homecoming, Christmas Stories by Anne Perry. The Anne Perry books are fantastic. I know that one too. I love that one. I read that a couple Christmases ago, I think. Really nice. Soldiers brought souvenirs from home. That's right, Karen. And that created, I think, people coming back from the war, not really talking a lot about it because, again, that was something of that generation. Men would not be talking about their experiences in these faraway places, but they did bring back souvenirs. They certainly brought back personality, maybe a little bit of edginess, memories, things that weren't spoken about. And women were, in general, very curious about what that experience was like, but were too polite or worried to pry. So this whole trend is generated where women are so interested in what is over there. What's it about? What does it look like? I've never been there. I probably never will be there, but you were there for years and I'm really curious about it. Works its way into art, works its way into rugs, and works its way into daily life and decorating. You see it in pottery and stuff too. So we'll pick up there tomorrow with some of her more exotic rugs. More Pearl McGown tomorrow. I promise you I'm going to hang on. Even my head is hanging on by a thread. I will be back tomorrow loaded with makeup and looking like a clown. Goodbye from me and sweet stuff, Jocelyn.
Bye.
We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. You little sweet pea. You little